Last the kids are gone now for the day. She reaches for the coffee as the school bus pulls away. Another day to tend the house and plan for Friday at the Legion when she's dancing with her man. Sure was a bitter winter, but Friday will be fine, and maybe last year's Easter dress will serve her one more time. She passed for 29, but for her eyes, but winter lines are telling wicked lies.
Hello, Canada and hockey fans in the United States and Newfoundland.
There are more of us than ever before. But it's always a question of quality as against quantity in these lives.
Here we have the essence and genius of Canadianism. Unity through division.
Everybody realizes that Mr. Trudeau doesn't give a tinker's damn for Western Canada.
Two full-blown separatist movements have grown up under the Liberals and Conservatives.
For the first time in our history, parents believe that the future of their children will be less promising than their own.
Because the rules of economics are, first of all, competence.
But listen, you kid, don't get caught in the Canadian syndrome, where if it's Canadian, it's got to be bad. We're the best. I've been telling you the best.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Red Ensign Special, Legitimacy, Popular Sovereignty versus the Rights of Man. Now, as I record this, we are in the midst of a very long-running conflict in the Anglosphere, not just in the Anglosphere colonies of the United States, but really throughout the periphery of the American Empire. In the post-war period, as the United States rewrote the way that the Western world was governed, it wrote into the governments over time the central contradiction at the heart of its own political formula. The United States is an interesting polity in that it is at the same time a polity which predicates legitimacy on popular sovereignty and a polity that has a critarchy, judicial supremacy, which predicates its authority not on popular sovereignty, in fact, explicitly on a legal positivist view of the inalienable rights of man, which has expanded dramatically over the history of that nation. And the balance between these two forces in their politics has shifted over the country's history, but and that shifting sand has come to kind of define American politics from a certain point of view. This conflict is entirely novel to the Anglo and continental political traditions, and yet over time it has been exported there. The United Kingdom did not originally have a Supreme Court. Canada did, but from very early in its history, it established the principle of parliamentary and executive supremacy, a principle which was still strong enough at the time of the patriation of the Constitution in the 80s that not only was a notwithstanding clause inserted into the Constitution in order to circumscribe the court's ability to legislate the way that it had in the United States, but also very significant emergency powers of a variety of different types remained with the executives both at the federal and provincial level. And so you continued to have features like the War Measures Act available to protect the supremacy of the king and parliament over the burgeoning judiciary. This conflict has been fascinating to observe and has produced a number of very dramatic incidents over the last couple of years, none more enjoyable than what is currently going on in the United Kingdom. Now, for those who don't follow UK politics, over the course of the last couple of weeks, Nigel Farage has come under siege because of alleged improprieties in his financial disclosures. Nigel Farage has had a number of donors, many of whom donated to him before he formed the Reform Party, when he was essentially just a private citizen who had a kind of special place in the hearts of certain elements of British politics. And some of these donations that he got before he became formally involved in parliamentary politics, I guess, were not properly disclosed at the time he entered Parliament as an MP in Clacton. Now, under UK parliamentary rules, should he be suspended as an MP, he would then be forced to fight a by-election in order to retain his seat. Now, Nigel Farage had a very particular strategy that he employed in order to try to neutralize this attack levied against him by the two forces which in both the United Kingdom, Canada, and many other places are representations of the part of the state that believes it has legitimacy on the basis of its absolute moral claims in the direction of the rights of man, the bureaucracy and the judiciary, right? So his perspective is that the way to attack this part of the government, the way to defang its attack on him more specifically, was to go independently in advance of their findings and seek a popular mandate in order to prevent this strategy being employed against him. Excuse me. And so Nigel Farage earlier in the week resigned as a member of Parliament in order to trigger a by-election in which he intended to run. There's a lot of ways in which to view this maneuver, but he is at a very basic level appealing to popular sovereignty as a source for the legitimacy of his movement, expecting that he will be able to win this, expecting at the time that he'd be able to win the seat in a kind of landslide, and that from a position of a landslide electoral result, he would be in a position to dismiss both the media and the parliamentary bureaucracy's attempts to delegitimize his position, right? So he's appealing very strongly to one of these two elements of the bi-element political formula which exists in Britain at this point, and the one which is much more ancient and much more organic to the British political tradition. Interestingly, this conflict between the judiciary and elements of the civil service loyal to a political, or who see legitimacy through the lens of the political formula of the rights of man, and have the rights of man, but probably better stated in the modern American empire as the anti-fascist state, have come into conflict repeatedly over the last few years. And there are many of these incidents. And just before we dig farther into Nigel Farage's piece, I think we should review some of these incidents and note that not everybody is on the side you might expect. So if you look at Canada, just a few days ago, Richard Martel, who's a Conservative MP, has been shipped out of Conservative caucus because Mark Carney appointed him to the Senate. This is the latest in a long string of parliamentary maneuvers Mark Carney is engaged in order to create a majority out of a minority electoral result. Mark Carney's view is that that legitimacy for his government comes from his position in Parliament and the kind of the legal position that he holds as a majority government holder, and that the fact that he did not obtain that position through appealing to popular sovereignty is of almost no consequence. And he has been demonstrated to be correct in this matter. There's been very little popular resistance and essentially no institutional resistance. There has been no repeat of the King Bing Wing Ding, forcing him to go to the electorate for a mandate. There's been no resistance from the Canadian judiciary. There have been no figures in the army or the police that have accused him of being illegitimate. There haven't even been prominent provincial leaders who have critiqued this approach or even described his mandate as weak or questionable in the face of this kind of unprecedented move. And I find that very interesting. You would expect a kind of populist leader like Doug Ford to be very opposed to this view of legitimacy. And yet, Doug Ford recognizes a common class member in Mark Carney. And so his view of legitimacy coming from popular consent goes into the back room when it's beneficial to him to ignore it. You see this across a number of members of a number of people in prominent positions in the Canadian government. Let's put it that way. Interestingly, you see in Canadian Politics and Public Policy, this is a think tank piece written by Laurie Turnbull, who is exactly the kind of person you would expect to write the case for floor crossing to defend the Mark Carney majority government. And so you see some very predictable members of the kind of what I would call the Guardian Council, self-appointed, that exists in all of these anti-fascist states, come and do their bit. On the other hand, people like the Fraser Institute, who you would expect to be pretty committed to the legal framework and the kind of anti-fascist state as providing legitimacy, are surprisingly strong advocates for the importance of popular sovereignty, defending things like the notwithstanding clause that place the authority of the elected part of government as supreme over the authority of the part of the government which obtains its legitimacy from defending liberal anti-fascist principles. In Canada, who protects individual liberties? Not the court, but the people, basically, is the argument here. Fascinating choice from the Fraser Institute. But you see this conflict repeatedly over the provinces of the American Empire. In Germany, the largest single party in the German parliament is on the verge of being banned. I followed this story for a very long time. I can never figure out whether they're actually going to be banned or not. But they have been talking for more than a year about using the legal anti-fascist apparatus to exclude the AFD from parliament there. classic kind of guardian council behavior here. And you saw it at work in the 2020 election, where the part of the government which obtains its legitimacy not from popular sovereignty, the Supreme Court, refused to hear challenges to the manipulation of procedural outcomes which led to the Biden presidency. So you've seen a lot of very successful resistance to political figures drawing their legitimacy from popular sovereignty by this combined class of the courts and the civil service. And you see people lining up on somewhat unexpected sides of this, unless you kind of really think about what their political interests are and why they might be more married to one rather than the other. All this in mind, one of my favorite things to ever happen in British politics has happened in order to frustrate Nigel Farage's attempt to obtain legitimacy from a victory in a popular election. And this is what I mean. There are surprising allies to proceduralism and to the kind of critarchy of the anti-fascist state, especially in circumstances where there's a kind of utilitarian advantage. Every single party in the United Kingdom has declined to run candidates, from Rupert Lowe to Labour to the Conservative Party to the Greens. They have decided in concert to decline to participate in this election in order to prevent Nigel Farage from obtaining the legitimacy he seeks in his conflict with the Parliamentary Standards Office, whatever it's called. I find it fascinating that that Rupert Lowe, who is seeking a popular mandate to overturn large elements of the Blairite imposition of the kind of Americanized state, which draws its legitimacy from these kinds of universal moral values, articulated sometimes as the rights of man, articulated sometimes as anti-fascism. This is all a part of the state that he explicitly plans to overturn. And yet, in a moment of political advantage, he's decided to hand Nigel Farage right over to this element of the state and put Nigel Farage into the position where he is running a by-election against only one opponent, and that is Count Binface, a political comedian who I guess always tries to run against various leaders in British elections, such that if the opponents of Nigel Farage consolidate around Mr. Binface, they may well defeat him and end Farage's political career and throw Reform UK into total chaos, utterly humiliating Farage and possibly ending his political career. And if Mr. Binface is defeated by Farage, you will see a situation where it will not be difficult for the parliamentary committee to force Farage to fight a second by-election after it renders its verdict on these procedural irregularities in Farage's finances. Fascinating situation. Now, I will, for the sake of this video, be mildly indulgent, and we're going to watch a whole 2 minutes of Count Binface being interviewed on the BBC, because the BBC is, a key element of the part of the state which draws its legitimacy not from popular sovereignty, and so it has given this opportunity, it is very excited to stick the knife into Farage, twist it, and watch him bleed out on the floor. And so you have major networks all over the UK giving serious airtime to Mr. Binface. Let's see how that went.
You know, if I get the 10 nominations, because, hey, look, there's no guarantee I'm standing for the election, as I'm sure you know. I'm game, but I have to get the signatures from 10 local inhabitants. Otherwise, this is a non-starter. And then, of course, I will tailor my manifesto to the local area as always. But most of my national policies will remain: building at least one affordable house, nationalising Adele, bring back CFAX, and, of course, moving the hand dryer in the gents' toilet in the Crown and Treaty pub Uxbridge to a more sensible position, because, as you know, it's a national issue.
Those policies didn't go down too well, did they, with the good people of Makerfield? I believe you got 95 votes at the recent by-election. So how are you hoping to do any better?
What a disgracefully scornful tone. How dare you? 95 actual votes? That's a Dolly Parton. 95, just one shy of a reverse 69, which I scored against Boris in an Uxbridge sports hall in 2019. So I'm cock-a-hoop. I'm over your moon. I'm over my moon. I'm doing very well. I came 7th out of 14. I mean, what more do you want?
What do you say to those other parties who have decided not to field candidates in Clacton?
Well, I mean, that's for them, isn't it, mate? That's democracy. They can choose to run away from my beneficence and magnificence, or maybe they just noticed that Nigel is up to a rather peculiar hissy fit, and they're keeping their powder dry for a second by-election when, of course, the parliamentary committee reports. But interesting, you see, the thing is, that second election, which would cost 380 grand, will only happen if Nigel wins this one. So if you vote Binface, you save the British taxpayer £380,000 without me doing anything.
All right. I finally have a politician that I can wholeheartedly support. The British taxpayer does not need to pay £380,000 in order to indulge Nigel Farage. If I have any followers who are eligible to vote in the Clacton by-election, I highly encourage you to vote Binface. A vote for Binface is a vote for a better future. Thank you for your time and attention. I hope you learned something.
Canada originally was put together by two groups of people who didn't have much in common but didn't want to be American.
The line just popped into my head. A bunch of the boys was a-whooping it up. And there I got my start.
We have had a flag. Flags can be changed. But flags cannot be imposed, the sacred symbols of a people's hopes and aspirations, by the simple, capricious, personal choice of a Prime Minister of Canada.
I have watched this country for half of my life from abroad, and we have turned complacency into just that, a national sport.
I am resolutely opposed to all innovation, all change, but I am determined to understand what's happening. I don't choose just to sit and let the juggernaut roll over me.